How user behavior plays a decisive role in the ranking of web pages, with Arnout Hellemans. The In Search SEO Podcast is brought to you by Similarweb, helping you build better SEO strategies with digital intelligence, insights, and data. Hey, it's David. What role does user behavior play in the ranking of web pages? That's what we're discussing today with a man who went online for the first time in 1992. He's spoken at multiple conferences and is a freelance SEO and analytics consultant who has been in SEO and broader digital marketing for the past 17 years. A warm welcome to the In Search SEO Podcast, Arnout Hellemans.
Thanks for having me, David. Awesome. And thanks for that intro.
Yeah, thanks so much for coming on. We can find Arnout over at onlinemarketing.com. So, Arnout, I must ask you first of all, tell me about going online for the first time in 1992.
Oh, wow. That was the time of 14K4 modems and 28K2 and that 28K8. Back in the days, it was just fun. And I love exploring things. I think that's part of who I am. And still remembering going to the website of ajax.com. I think it's ajax.com, which is basically the football club I support. And that was just a weird experience. But yeah, I've my whole career has been centered around the web.
There weren't many brands creating websites back then. I mean, Tim Berners-Lee created the web in 1989 and made it public in 1991. So this is just 1 year after that we're talking about.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow. Well, today we're discussing how user behavior plays a decisive role in the ranking of web pages. So to begin with, how important a ranking factor is user behavior?
Well, it's the only real scalable ranking mechanism after what I would call backlinks. They are still really important, but in the end, if you look at Google, if you look at search engines in general, it's their task to deliver the answer to a question, right? And the only way to properly measure the quality of the answer is by looking at, is there a follow-up search? If there isn't a follow-up search, you could assume that the question was the right one or the answer was the right one for that question.
So we're just talking about user behavior on the SERP or user behavior on web pages?
Well, the thing is, and this is an interesting one because I think in the beginning they could only really trust the SERP, right? You do a search, you click something, you do a follow-up search, and you can kind of make out what was the right one then. So if you click 3 different ones and the third one actually was the answer to your question, or that was satisfied your question, then that would work. I think from the leak, and I think they also talked about it publicly now, is that they're also using Chrome data. And with Chrome having 90+% of market share in at least the Western world, that's kind of a biggie, I would say, because that way they can look a little bit further. Loads of people have said they look at Google Analytics, but they can't because the biggest websites don't use GA. They don't use Google Analytics, but they don't decide what kind of browser we use. So they get all of that data. So I think that could also help them with seeing if certain websites resonate with users for different behaviors. And I think one step further, they're kind of forcing people to log in on a browser level. So you don't log into your Gmail, but you log in with your Google account in the browser. So they can do cross-browser checking because you're logged in on your mobile device, on your desktop device, on your tablet, maybe even on your TV, right? So they can see the whole of a user. And I mean, I opted out for sharing data to Google, but I guess the majority doesn't.
Yeah.
A massive majority. So they'll have loads of signals they can use to see if a website is actually deserving to rank for certain intents.
Yeah, you're talking about the Google API leak and late May 2024. And obviously before then, SEOs surmised that signals from web pages, from browsing activity impacted results on the SERP. But over the last few weeks, we've, because of the leak, become more confident that user signals from such behavior has a measurable impact on SEO rankings.
Yeah, but even before, right? Because the weird thing was, because my name is not Googled that often, about 200 to 300 times a month. But the thing is that there is a person, probably we are related in some way, who was very famous in the 16th to 17th century, right? He only lived for 58 years. But he's got a Wikipedia entry, he's got like loads of books written about him because he was related to a royal family. And the interesting thing I saw in 2019 was when Google did its core update, the SERP would be like 90%, so 9 out of the 10 results on the first page right after the core update would have been him. But then after 3 to 4 weeks, he wouldn't be found and it would just be me. Now that to me is a very clear signal that based on link value and those kind of things, the old page rank, he would deserve the SERP. But the relevance, he wasn't there because most people were looking for me and for whatever reason, right? But not for the other person that lived in the 16th century. So right after the core update, like you could see that change. And I think what they now say is the core update will take 3 weeks to roll out. I don't think it's rolling out. I think it's settling in the user signals.
But is this an example of the personalized SERP, or is this a result that's delivered and available to everyone, no matter what their search history is?
I think this is partly personalized, sir, but only if there is enough volume for both. Like if 90% of queries are about me and not the other one that lived in the 16th century, then that's going to take over the default SERP, not even personalized. And on that, I think every single SERP is pretty much in some ways personalized on location, on search behavior, on things you've just looked for in Google Maps or emails you've just gotten on Gmail. Yes, it's all personalized.
Yeah. I mean, it takes me down the rabbit hole of how do you measure success and likely rankings nowadays if everything's personalized.
So the interesting thing about this, and I think Google would be nice if they would give us real insight, because I think in Google Search Console you won't get to see all of it, unfortunately, because of privacy and blah, blah. I think the best way to measure it is down to your bottom line. Because in the end, if you create the right user experience that leads to a sale, leads to a sign up, leads to whatever you want a user to do in your website, if you get more of that, you're doing a good job. Does it really matter that it might have an effect that you have less traffic, but way better converting traffic? I mean, I'd know what I'd choose. I'd rather have the right traffic.
So how do we actually measure the way that users interact on your webpage?
I think there's loads of ways. I think the first thing you need to do is start looking at the SERP and look at what kind of content is Google expecting. It's not only Google expecting it, it's user behavior that has driven that expectation, right? So if there's Google Maps, if there's YouTube videos or videos in general, if there's images, then your content needs to also have those elements. If you are publishing content for a review for a certain TV, and every single SERP element is a video, right? If you are not adding a video, you are basically disqualifying yourself from that particular SERP. So it started with doing the research. Also look at the people also ask questions, which will give you very good guidance on what kind of questions should be answered. Not only in written way, but also you can use that as a script for your video or for your images or for your whatever. Then the second thing is that it's decisive. But then when you get onto the web page, check things like, are they scrolling all the way down? How many people actually made it to the bottom of the page? How many people click the share button? How many people do these kind of things, right? And then I think Google gave us a very big hint on their help forums because they had a thumbs up and thumbs down at the bottom of their content, which I think is very clear indication that if people say, yes, this was helpful, they are basically measuring how helpful is my content. If, say, more people do a thumbs down, there's something wrong with their content. Like, it's not properly answering the question the user has. So I think there is a lot of ways of doing it. By default, GA4, for instance, does an okay-ish job. I think way better than Universal Analytics with their bounce rate, because that was a crap metric. But you need to be adding things in there yourself, like how many people scrolled to half the page? How many people scrolled all the way? How many people clicked share buttons? How many did the thumbs up at the bottom? If you do a thumbs down, a very simple thing is just to have a feedback form there. Another great thing is just above your footer, just have an open field with, is there any way for, do you have any questions or is there any suggestion how we can improve this page? Like you might get, 10 people a week giving you feedback, but that means people giving you feedback, there's probably 10 or 20 or 40 people missing that part. It's very simple. You need to start listening to your users, your potential users. Another one is talk to your customer service. How many people actually talk to their customer service? So there's a lot of ways.
Is there any software that you recommend to add these additional elements to your webpage that you recommend and also measure the impact of adding these elements?
Well, I don't really like third-party software solutions because they slow down pages, right? But a great way to get people on board with all of this is basically use a free tool like Microsoft Clarity, right? It's free and it will just give you heat maps, scroll depth. It will give you recordings. So if you spend some time, you can see actual users interact with your website and you'll find so many things that can improve. And just having a form on the bottom. I like forms because I see a lot of people say, hey, but I've got this chat pop-up. And I'm like, yeah, but a chat pop-up is fine if you want support. But otherwise, it feels very salesy. It's more like a Jehovah's Witness. And it just doesn't really work. So I'd rather just have an open form that it says name, not mandatory, email address mandatory, and your suggestion/question. Anybody can build that. If you have WordPress, just get one of the form builders, put it in there. It should be easy peasy.
Great, okay. And when you're actually trying to be successful, you want to make sure that you're comparing yourself or your web page against something that's relevant. So another similar web page in your industry or perhaps off your own website as well. Is there a way that you can get these kind of metrics from competitors to see how you're performing against them?
Well, yeah, there are, of course, the rank tracking tools are there, and things like you could Similarweb, SEMrush, Ahrefs, they all give you Systrix, they all give you a share of voice, but actual interactions on a web page, no. And the only thing I could see from a speed perspective is the Crux data set. So Crux stands for Chrome UX data. And it's an open data set that will allow you to build a, site speed performance benchmark for any page that has, I think, more than 400 visits on the domain level, something like that, a month. But those are the ones. But actual interactions, no, because it's their data. If they are measuring it, they can do that. What you could do is do an UX audit on their content. Is it better than yours, right? You can get a third person to look at that. But no, there's no real, that's the pity thing of it. But on the other hand, it's also, are you serving the exact same demographic, the same intent, the same? Really? Because usually as a business, you position yourself in a certain way. Are you for beginners? Are you for experts? Are you for whatever? I hate the word, but it depends.
Let's finish off with
the Pareto pickle.
So Pareto says that you can get 80% of your results from 20% of your efforts. What's one SEO activity you would recommend that provides incredible results for modest levels of effort?
I think that's always a bit of it depends. But if I still need to choose, I'm going to go for do a proper UX audit of your website. Like really think it through, because in the end, if your checkout is broken, if you don't have inline validation, if you don't have all of these kind of things, or if your page loads very slow in the initial load, like these are things that will definitely hold you back. And the impact will be broader than just SEO, right? If you have paid traffic, it will perform better. If you have social traffic, it will perform better. If you have organic traffic, it will perform better. And in the end, it will always lead to more, right? Either in conversions, in leads or whatever. And I think in the longer term, it will greatly impact SEO as well.
I've been your host, David Bain. You can find Arnout Hellemans over at onlinemarketing.com. Arnout, thanks so much for being on the In Search SEO podcast.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And thank you for listening. Check out all the previous episodes and sign up for a free trial of the Similarweb platform over at Similarweb.com.